Hello and welcome to our review of the Motorola Moto G, the new budget smartphone which has been launched recently by Motorola, who are now part of Google. Here's the device itself. I'll get over to that in just a moment. Just a quick look at the box. Here we've got Motorola, a Google company on the front. Very small retail box, and that is because inside we only have micro USB data cable in white, as you can see, regardless of the black color of the phone, and a bit of paperwork, starter manual, and safety information. So that's all you get from Motorola in the box there. Some might be concerned at the lack of a wall charger, and just to confirm, here on the back of the box it does actually say USB charging cable included, wall charger sold separately. Yeah, some people might be concerned about that. Really, I think it's just Motorola/Google cutting their costs a little bit per unit. Allows the device to be sold a little bit more cheaply, and quite frankly, you've probably got a micro USB mains charger hanging around for either your current smartphone or possibly some other portable devices that you've got. So it seems like a bit of a smart move, really, and they are available. They're cheap accessories to buy separately as well. So that's that. Just a quick look inside the box. Now, if we take a look at the phone itself, this is the Moto G. I've got the 16 gig model here in black. The back cover, which is a matte back cover, is removable and interchangeable. There's plenty of different colours arriving. Hopefully we'll be getting those in the first week of December here at Clove. Might be a little bit later. We're yet to get them in, but there's a whole range of colours. You've got yellow, green, turquoise, blue, red. There's a white cover. They've also got a flip cover as well, which will flip over the front of the phone, so it will replace the back and flip over the front to cover the screen. Those are covered in the same range of colours as well, so it's quite cool. You'll be able to customise it a little bit, and they're quite inexpensive as well. Now take a look at the size of the device in comparison to something else. I've got the Nexus 5 here, and you see side by side they're actually quite similar in size. You'll notice the screen on the Moto G is smaller. Now it's a 4.5 inch screen as opposed to this is a 4.9 inch. A 4.5 I find is pretty much the best middle ground size to still be able to use the device comfortably with one hand, without being too large. Sometimes the larger screens can be difficult to use in one hand, and for many people, you might have smaller hands than myself. I've got, I'd say, quite average size hands. Women perhaps with smaller hands, or teenagers, or anyone with a smaller hand, that's about the right size. Anything bigger than that can often be difficult to use with one hand. So I think they've got the design size aspect quite right. Weight and thickness, it's a little bit thicker. Obviously it's not a premium device, so they haven't really tried to trim it off or go all out on the design. It's quite a no frills look, a simple black kind of slab. It's a little weighty, it's just over 140 grams. So you might get some other small phones or cheaper phones on the market which don't feel as heavy as this. I actually find that quite pleasant. While it's in the hand, it feels like it's a solid build. Even though it's a cheaper budget device, it still feels like a quality solid handset, and that it can possibly withstand the odd knock and, you know, daily use. And to get that cover off, there's no groove around the edge. There's nowhere to just pop it off. You have to get your palm of your hand and go from the bottom of the device and just clip it off like that. Just use your palm and your fingers, so you don't have to go sticking a nail in. It's useful if you don't have much in the way of nails. So there's a removable cover. Nothing fancy in here. There's no gold contacts for NFC or wireless charging or anything like that. It's just a simple plastic backplate with a cutout for the camera, the flash, and the speaker grill just there. And as I said, these will be available in a range of colours. I do believe the standard cases like this should be available for under £10. The flip cases are a little bit more. Taking a look at the back of the device, you can see the non-removable battery not user removable written there. So it's a sealed unit. If you do have any issues with batteries and charging, it will have to go for a warranty servicing. You cannot simply swap a battery out on that. Some people don't like that approach, but it's becoming far more common on devices now. It again keeps costs down. It's just the way that a lot of more budget devices are going these days, and even some of the higher flagship devices. The only port under the cover is here for the micro SIM card, right in there. So that's the only reason, if you're not changing the cover out for a new colour, the only reason you'd ever really want to take it off is to get to the SIM tray, pop your SIM in, and get the phone working. There's nothing else there, so there's no micro SD card or expandable storage. Google have made it quite clear over the last year or so that they're removing support for external storage from Android for anything other than files. So that's the design, feel and look of the device. As I say, it's quite pleasant. It's no frills. It's what you'd expect from a budget phone. There's nothing too fancy. The only downside I would say to the design is it's a bit thick on the top and the bottom. The bezel's here at the top and the bottom. This is all dead space. There's no soft keys here. All the soft keys are on the actual Android UI, as you can see me pressing the multitasking and the home buttons there and the back button. So this is all dead space, and most of this at the top where I've got the speaker grill and the front-facing camera, that could have been trimmed. Again, if that's to save time on research and development and keep the cost down, revising the handset down a little bit smaller could have cost more. It's perfectly understandable. So it's not going to be the smallest phone you see, but it's definitely a good solid build for your money, for your under £150 for the 8 gig. Now what we have here is the new Android Experience launcher, although we're not quite running the newest KitKat on this phone yet, Android 4.4. So we've got 4.3 Jelly Bean with a new Experience launcher. There will be a 4.4 KitKat update that will be available hopefully by the end of the new year. Motorola have said it's guaranteed, so we might see that before the turn of the new year, sometime next month in December. In terms of apps, what you get on the phone to begin with, not very much pre-installed apart from the core Google apps. Google drop a folder in right here at the start. And you've got a folder and you can see most of your core applications that you would want available straight away from the home screen in that folder. So you've got Gmail, you've got your Play Store link, you've got Drive, People, which is your contacts, you've got Hangouts, also from the main bar you've got Phone, Camera, Messaging and Chrome, all the Play Store, sub-stores, books, movies, music, etc. So a fair amount there ready to go. One thing that shows that this is 4.3 not 4.4 is the separate messaging app. That's been dropped. So when this device, the Moto G, gets updated to 4.4 KitKat, this may well disappear and all the standard SMS messaging will be transferred into Hangouts. That's what's happened on the Nexus 5. It's up to Motorola whether or not they decide to implement that on their KitKat update. I would expect it to happen because it's one of the bigger features that changed in Android 4.4. So you may find if you use the standard messaging app after an update later this year, that changes. None of the data will be lost. It would simply be moved over to the Hangouts application. Some of the other apps on the device, so if we go into our main app drawer, as well as having a few basics such as the FM radio here, your gallery and camera and all sorts, there's a couple of little Motorola additions. There's Motorola Assist, which allows you to set up some information on the device to keep it silent at particular times, such as meetings. It can scan for meetings set on your Google Calendar, and you can decide whether or not to silence the device whenever it recognizes that you're at the same time as a meeting. Same thing with sleeping. You can set what time you generally go to sleep and whether or not to silence. You can also set whitelisted phone numbers that can still call through the silence if required, emergency contacts for instance. There is a Moto Care application on here. There it is on the bottom right. Moto Care, I'm not connected to network here, so I've got a little pop-up message. Moto Care allows you to use search functionality to search help guides, contact a Motorola support representative, and it uses your Motorola device ID, which you can see in the settings. And there's also Motorola Migrate, which is a neat way of getting information off your old Android phone. If your old Android is running 2.2 and above, I do believe, you can download Migrate to it, set that up, set Migrate up on this phone, and you can transfer information such as contacts, text messages, photos, videos, general media and content that you might not have backed up in another manner. That's quite a useful thing to have. Specification wise, in terms of how the Moto G runs, it's a very responsive device. Google have done very well in minimizing the Android code and making it run on lower end devices. Now the Moto G isn't actually that low end compared to everything else on the market. For this price point, it actually has a fantastic specification. It's got the new Qualcomm Snapdragon 400 processor, which is a quad-core processor and makes this by far the cheapest quad-core handset on the market. It's got a gig of RAM, and that processor also has the Adreno 305 GPU, which means that the Moto G is quite capable of running some fairly decent quality games, 3D games, which would not have been possible in any phone of this kind, of this type, this price point, even only a few months ago. So specification wise, it's not as low as the price point would make out. It's far better value for money than you get from any other manufacturer currently, and all that puts towards an extremely smooth interface with the new launcher, and hopefully that will continue when 4.4 KitKat hits. So the camera application on the Moto G is very similar to the camera that you find on the Nexus 5 and the Nexus 4 as well. It's quite a basic camera. There's not many settings options. The settings are accessed from the left with this slide wheel here, so you scroll across to bring those up. Pop this into widescreen mode, so I'm using the full screen. And it's quite a basic camera. There's not a lot of settings in here. You can change from, I'll bring a little bit closer so you can see them. Hopefully the video camera will focus. There we are. So I've got HDR, we need to put flash. That's my touch focus. I can take slow motion video, panorama photosphere, which is a Google addition, which allows you to take kind of 360-degree photos. Put my location tagging on or off. Switch from 16:9 to 4:3 ratio, and turn on and off my sounds. So there's no real scenes or settings or anything to do with white balance, changing your lighting, ISO ratings. None of that's present on the camera app here. So it's a very basic point and shoot. You pretty much get what you see. There's also no image stabilization on this. Image stabilization helps remove any blur that you might get if you accidentally shake when you take an image. So you can get good images from it. You just have to put the effort in, really. Make sure you've got a steady hand if you're doing landscapes, and especially if you're doing HDR, which is the high dynamic range shots, as that takes a number of shots at once and filters them all through an algorithm to get the best possible color ratios. You do have to have a steady hand with this camera. You can still get some very good shots. Indoor performance is pretty good. Outdoors, the whites are a bit off. It's quite basic. But as a point and shoot, and as an addition to the Moto G, you can really expect more considering the price point. It works, it's functional, it does the job of a smartphone camera on a smartphone of this price. Not the best, but I've seen worse. This is, in my opinion, the future of Android devices. It's a low price, however, providing decent quality power and providing a smooth experience is what you would expect from Google themselves promoting their own device, even though it's manufactured by Motorola. We should start seeing more devices of this type. The other big manufacturers out there, HTC, Samsung, Sony, even some of the smaller manufacturers such as ZTE, the Chinese company, if they can start producing devices of this type at this price with this specification, then we were in for a really, really good year ahead in terms of what the consumer can buy and at what price they can buy it for. At the moment, the Moto G is in a class of its own, without a doubt. Nothing can really touch it in terms of performance, speed, screen quality, the ability, its compatibility with games and other devices. The only downsides, I would say, is if you're a power user, you're someone who's really into the latest and greatest, and you just want to try this out as an alternative to the big name devices. It is a little bit limited on its connectivity options. There's no LTE for a start, so if you've got an LTE contract and you're used to using LTE, at the moment the Moto G is not for you. It's straight away is not. It's only got 3G capabilities, HSPA, so up to 21 megabits per second if you're that supported by your network, but no LTE. That's the first thing. Also, there's no NFC, as I mentioned earlier. We took off the back cover, so if you've invested in any one-touch accessories, NFC tags, things that require syncing, Bluetooth headsets that have NFC capabilities, that's lost on the Moto G. Still got the Bluetooth, so it can still connect to many of those devices, just doesn't have the one touch to tap to connect, which means there's no Android Beam direct tap to connect transfers either, although Wi-Fi Direct is present, so you can transfer with Wi-Fi Direct if you can connect the two devices up correctly. You'll also find without NFC, there's also no video out as well, so there's no way to put video from this device onto another screen. The USB port doesn't contain MHL or slim port connectivity, and there's no screen mirroring either. If I go into the settings, something I was actually quite surprised to miss from the device, if we go into display here in the settings, there would on most new devices be a wireless display option down here. Just to show that on the Nexus 5, go into the settings on the Nexus 5 and go into display, it's right there, wireless display. And as far as I'm aware, that's a hardware issue, and the Moto G should have the hardware to do it. It's got the ability to connect to Wi-Fi networks, so it might find in the 4.4 update that's unlocked through a software update. It might not, it's up to Motorola. Quite surprised it's not there, because it leaves this with no video out capability whatsoever. It's a niche thing, not many people use that, but it could make or break a sale for some people. So it's not there on the Moto G. But that's really about the only bad points I can say about it, to be honest with you. It's no video out and no LTE, and that really is it. In terms of looking at budget handsets, perhaps as a present for someone else, as a backup phone for yourself, maybe your first kind of foray into smartphones if you've been using feature phones or dumb phones before, it's pretty much perfect. Price, design, usability, ticks every box. Not much else I can say. If you're in the market for a budget handset, almost certainly get the Moto G. Thanks for watching.